The lobby of Meridian Communications was chaos that Tuesday morning. Phones buzzed, heels clicked against polished marble. The revolving doors spun endlessly as a stream of clients and employees flooded in. Voices overlapped, snippets of deadlines, meetings, strategy calls, blurring into a single hum of corporate urgency. I moved silently within it all, invisible. Just the intern. Just the girl with a stack of copies pressed against her chest, weaving past designers with coffee cups and account executives barking into headsets. No one looked at me, and I had gotten used to it. That's when I saw him. An elderly man stood at the front desk, rigid but dignified. His navy suit was pressed to perfection, shoes polished until they reflected the fluorescent lights above. His silver hair caught the morning sun slicing in through the glass walls. Everything about him radiated quiet authority, except his eyes. His eyes were frantic. He was trying to speak, but no one was listening. His mouth formed words Jessica at the reception desk couldn't hear, couldn't read, and wouldn't slow down long enough to understand. "Sir, you will have to write it down," Jessica said, already turning to another visitor. The man's hands moved in quick, deliberate gestures, fingers slicing through the air, shaping letters, words. My heart tightened. I recognized it instantly. He was signing. And no one noticed. Not the receptionist, not the associates brushing past, not the creative directors balancing their presentation boards. Dozens of people surged around him, all too busy to see a 70-year-old man unraveling in the middle of the lobby. I froze. I wasn't supposed to be here. My supervisor had assigned me to help organize binders for the client pitch, nothing else. Interfering would only earn me another lecture about knowing my place. But then he lowered his hands. His shoulders sagged, and in that tiny collapse of posture, I saw Danny, my little brother, standing in the corner of his elementary school cafeteria, ignored because he couldn't hear the other kids calling him. A sharp heat shot up my throat. I couldn't let this happen again. I put the copies down, ignored the anxious thrum in my chest, and stepped forward. "Hello," I signed, slowly, clearly. My hands trembled at first, but the language I'd practiced for years carried me. "My name is Catherine. Can I help you?" The change was instant. His face softened, his eyes widened with relief. His hands lifted gracefully, confidently. "You sign," he responded. "Thank God! I thought no one here would understand me." Around us, the office didn't notice. Phones kept ringing, shoes kept clicking, deals kept moving. But in that small corner of the lobby, the world shifted. "Of course," I signed back. "What do you need?" He hesitated, as though the truth weighed heavily on him. Finally, with careful precision, he spelled it out. "I'm here to see my son." I smiled. "That should be easy enough. What's his name?" The man's hands slowed. His gaze flicked toward the elevators, then back to me. His mouth pressed into a line, his expression a strange mix of pride and sadness. "Michael Hartwell," he signed. My breath caught. The name reverberated through me like a thunderclap. Michael Hartwell, CEO of Meridian Communications, the name etched into the building's glass doors. The man whose presence on the top floor sent entire departments into a frenzy of fear and performance. I stared at the elderly man in front of me. Perfect suit, quiet dignity, hands still hovering mid-air, waiting for my response. Michael Hartwell's father. The CEO's father had been standing in our lobby for 20 minutes, ignored like a nuisance. I forced my shock down and signed carefully. "Of course. Please, wait here. I'll find out how to reach him." He nodded once, though I caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, as though he was used to disappointment. I guided him to a leather chair in the seating area. He lowered himself with the precision of someone used to commanding rooms, but now cautious of intruding. His gaze swept the busy lobby, unreadable. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Hartwell's office. The line clicked. Hartwell's office, Patricia speaking. The assistant's voice was crisp, every syllable honed like a blade. Hi, Patricia. This is Catherine Walsh, intern program. I have a visitor in the lobby. He says he's Mr. Hartwell's father. Silence. A long, cold pause. His father? Yes, ma'am. Elderly gentleman, very well dressed. He's been waiting here. Hold, please. I held my breath as the lobby noise pressed around me, the weight of what I had just said filling the space. When Patricia came back, her tone was careful. Mr. Hartwell is in back-to-back meetings. He won't be available for at least an hour. Please have the visitor wait. I thanked her and hung up. When I turned back, the man, Robert, he signed when I asked him, was watching me closely. His eyes searched my face for the truth. He's in meetings, I signed softly. But if you'd like, we can wait. Robert gave a small, polite nod, though I saw the disappointment flicker before he buried it under years of practiced composure. I sat with him in that crowded lobby, translating fragments of small talk into gestures, filling the silence with warmth that no one else in the building had thought to offer. And all the while, high above us on the mezzanine, a shadow stood still. I didn't notice him yet, but the CEO of Meridian Communications was watching everything. Time stretched in the Meridian lobby the way it does in hospitals and airports, measured not by seconds, but by the accumulation of glances people don't want to give. Robert's hands were steady on his knees. Mine weren't. He'll see you, I signed, meaning eventually. He nodded, the small, gracious nod of a man who's learned to thank the world for crumbs. A group of account managers swept past us in a flurry of cologne and leather portfolios. One of them cut a look toward Robert, then to me, then away, as if courtesy might be contagious. I leaned closer. Would you like water? Coffee? He smiled with his eyes. Water. I brought it back in a paper cup that looked embarrassingly cheap in his careful hands. Across the lobby, Jessica at reception was fielding someone with a crisis voice. We cannot start without Michael. The words echoed against glass and steel. I watched the elevator numbers blink up and down, as if the building itself was pacing. Somewhere on those floors, the sun we were waiting for was deciding who mattered. Patricia called back. The message was surgical. Another hour. Robert's thumb found the rim of his cup and traced it. Once. All the way around. A decision rose inside me like a tide. I stood. Come with me. He blinked, surprised. Where? Around, I signed, if you'd like to see where your son's world lives. His answer was the kind of yes that fills an empty room. We slipped past the security turnstiles like we belonged there, because for the next 40 minutes, I decided we did. The building was a gallery of Meridian's ambition, oversized frames of award-winning campaigns, glass-walled conference rooms with tables that could seat a jury, the kind of open-plan floors where ideas were supposed to fly but mostly got trapped in slack. The air smelled faintly of printer toner and citrus cleaner. Everything in Meridian gleamed, including its indifference. I walked Robert through creative first. The music was low, the screens bright, the people fast. I tapped a designer's desk, Isabel, with a buzz cut and a tattoo of a line of poetry around her wrist. This is Robert, I said, making sure my face was in his line of sight before I signed. He's visiting. Isabel smiled and waved. Robert waved back, tentative at first, then fuller when she didn't flinch. I translated a few sentences. What are you working on? That's beautiful. My late wife taught English, and watched as the muscle memory of exclusion loosened in his shoulders. 2 desks over, someone muttered, "Isn't she supposed to be in prep?" I pretended not to hear it. Robert pretended grace. We moved on. In account, a whiteboard carried names written in different color markers like a family tree of clients. Robert studied the branches with an architect's gaze. "Do they choose this, or does this choose them?" he signed, tapping the board. "A little of both. Money does the rest." In the break room, the corporate coffee machine hissed like a tame dragon. A junior copywriter with a nose ring tried to ask Robert something without looking at me, without raising his voice like people do when they think sound can cross any distance. He spoke slowly, enunciating in a way that was somehow both kind and condescending. I stepped in, bridged it with my hands, watched as the awkwardness dissolved into actual conversation. It felt like catching a glass before it hit the floor. My phone vibrated. "Where are you?" from Margaret. Then, "We need those binders now." Then, "Catherine, this is not optional." I slid the phone back into my pocket like a hot coal. We reached the mezzanine level, a broad balcony overlooking the main floor, all glass railing and theatrics. From here, Meridian looked like a miniature city, rows of desks, tiny figures hustling, screens flickering like windows at night. Robert gripped the rail, looking down at the anthill his son commanded. His reflection hovered in the glass, silver hair, steady jaw, a face composed for decades to be read rather than heard. He signed, softer now, as if confiding to the pains. "He built this." "He did," I answered. "They respect him. They're afraid of him." I hesitated. Both can be true. Robert's fingers paused mid-air, then continued. When he was 10, he made cities out of cereal boxes, roads from rulers. He'd ask me where to put the bridges. I told him wherever people need to meet. Below us, a door opened. For a second, the crowd parted around a tall figure. I saw only the angle of a cheekbone, the flicker of a navy suit. Then he was gone, swallowed back into the movement. I felt something tilt inside me. We kept going. On the analytics floor, cooler, quieter, a kingdom of graphs, Robert watched charts bloom on a screen like weather patterns. Numbers became stories under my hands. Audience lift, conversion funnels, the poetry of people who didn't know they were being watched. He asked questions the way builders do. Where does weight sit? Where does it fail? A few people gathered, curious. A woman from media introduced herself, and for once, introduced herself properly, facing Robert, waving gently, waiting for me to interpret. When he answered, her expression changed from polite to human. That's a specific look. Most workplaces don't know how to manufacture it. My phone vibrated. "Catherine, I'm coming to find you." The last text was not a threat, it was a promise. We stepped into the Library of Campaigns, Meridian's trophy room. Hushed lighting, sleek pedestals, stories that had bought loft apartments and summer homes. Robert moved slowly, absorbing each photograph with the reverence of someone in a church. He asked for the ones his son had touched. I showed him the early campaigns, the risky ones, the ones Michael had pitched as a junior hotshot and won. We stood before a framed automotive ad, a single-lane road cutting through a sunrise, tagline simple and absolute. And Robert reached out, fingertip hovering a breath from glass. "He was 28, I signed. He nodded. His eyes shone. He always woke before me, even as a child. There was a sound behind us then, the soft drag of shoe leather. I turned instinctively. A man stood just inside the doorway, still as a cutout, watching. I had seen him only in glossy headshots and distant glimpses by the elevator, but there was no mistaking the geometry of him. The quiet carriage, the gaze that measured everything and betrayed nothing. Michael Hartwell. For a half heartbeat, no one moved. Robert felt my attention shift and turned.
Father and son faced each other across a room of framed victories, and in that silence, I heard the loudest thing all the years they had not spent. Michael's mouth opened, closed. The tendon in his jaw flexed. He did not come forward. He did not retreat. He watched his father the way men in high towers watch storms, calculating wind.
Robert's hands rose a few inches, then dropped. He smoothed his lapel, a gesture that said everything. Stand straight, don't ask, don't embarrass him. My throat burned. Michael's gaze slid to me. I could not read it. Approval? Condemnation? Curiosity, maybe. The kind that makes a man tilt his head when he sees a mechanism configured in a way he didn't authorize. I lifted my hands, then stopped. It wasn't my conversation to start. Michael blinked once, as if making a private decision, and stepped back out of the doorway. The moment closed like a book. Robert's breath left him in a careful exhale. He patted my arm, a small apology for my shock, for his son's distance, for the choreography of men who don't know how to begin. "Would you like to see the executive floor?" I asked. He smiled, but I saw grief peering over its shoulder. Yes. We took the elevator. The car hummed, our reflections hovered in stainless steel, the intern and the architect, two people holding a thread in a building that preferred cables. The executive suite opened like a hush, polished wood, low conversation, the exact lighting men of consequence prefer. On a sidewall hung a black and white photograph of the company's early team. Too many suits, not enough women, everyone standing with the posture of whoever took the picture. Robert drifted to it and found his son, a much younger Michael, expression bright, tie crooked. His hand lifted, hovered, fell. I pointed out the boardroom, the war room, the corner office door beyond which the skyline began. We didn't go in. That boundary felt like trespassing on a church's altar. "He keeps a lot of his life off the walls," I signed. "Most of the executives do. It's a style." "Or a shield," Robert answered. We walked back to the elevator in a silence that wasn't empty. On the way down, my phone finally stopped vibrating. When the doors opened into the lobby again, the Meridian morning had tipped into afternoon. The light was warmer, the urgency no less. Jessica's smile at reception was brittle with fatigue. Margaret stood near the security desk, arms folded so tightly the bones were a diagram. Her eyes found me like headlights. "Catherine," she said, voice precise, "we need to talk." I turned toward Robert, about to apologize, but a voice behind me, calm, clean, built to be obeyed, cut through the lobby noise like a blade through silk. "Actually, Margaret," it said, "I need to speak with Miss Walsh first." The lobby rippled. Heads turned, whispers rose. Someone dropped a pen that skittered too far across tile. I pivoted. Michael Hartwell approached with the quiet momentum of a man who rarely needed to walk fast to arrive first. Up close, the resemblance to Robert was undeniable. Same eyes, same considered stillness, the same refusal to waste a word. He didn't look at Margaret. He didn't look at the watchers orbiting us like satellites. He looked at me. "Ms. Walsh," he said, "you have something of mine." For a suspended second, absurd panic flashed. What did I take? A badge? A binder? A keycard? Then he turned, and I watched the careful line of his mouth soften. "Dad," he said aloud. Then he lifted his hands. The first sign wasn't elegant. It wobbled. The second found a rhythm. The third landed. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting." Robert's face broke open. Joy, shock, the kind of brightness you can't counterfeit. His hands flew up without asking permission from his composure. "You learned." Michael nodded once, almost to himself. as if acknowledging a private promise kept late. His voice when it returned was lower. "I would like a word with Miss Walsh. In my office." Margaret's jaw clicked shut. The lobby sound dropped a register. Robert was smiling at both of us like a man watching a bridge he designed appear brick by brick over a river that had divided a city. I swallowed, found my yes, and stepped into the arc of the elevator doors as they opened like parentheses around a sentence that would change my life. Michael stepped in after me. Robert, too. The doors slid closed on the lobby's astonishment. The elevator lifted. Michael looked straight ahead for 2 floors, the muscles in his cheek working as if he were chewing on a thought. Then, without looking at me, he said, "What you did down there, it won't be forgotten." I didn't trust my voice. I nodded. I was an intern, and this elevator had become a knife edge. The bell chimed. The doors parted onto glass and sky. Michael gestured towards his office with an open palm, not command, but invitation. "After you." We crossed the threshold together.
Michael's office wasn't an office. It was a skyline carved into glass and steel, the Chicago horizon spilling in like it had been imported for decoration. The carpet muted every step. The furniture wasn't furniture so much as sculpture. Dark wood, leather, chrome. But what struck me most was the emptiness. No family photos. No signs of life beyond the machinery of success. "Please, sit," Michael said. His voice carried authority, but something softer threaded beneath it. He didn't take his seat behind the imposing desk. Instead, he sat next to his father, leveling the ground in a way I hadn't expected. I lowered myself into the chair across from them, my hands locked together so tightly my knuckles whitened. Michael turned to Robert first. He signed with deliberate care. "I'm sorry. I should have come sooner." His response was swift, emotional, almost clumsy in its urgency. "You tried. That's enough." They held each other's gaze, an entire history passing between them without sound. I looked away, feeling like an intruder in a moment too raw to witness. Finally, Michael shifted his eyes to me. "Miss Walsh?" "Yes, sir?" My voice was too small for the room. "What you did today," he exhaled, leaning back, the glass wall framing his silhouette against the city. "You abandoned your assigned duties. You disrupted schedules. You gave my father an unauthorized tour of a multi-million-dollar company." My stomach lurched. This was it. Fired. End of story. "But," he continued, "you also gave him something this company hasn't, something I haven't. You gave him belonging." Robert touched his son's arm, nodding fiercely. Michael's eyes returned to me, sharper now, like he was testing the weight of his words. "I don't want to let you go. I want to offer you a position, a permanent one." The air left my lungs. "A position?" "Director of Accessibility and Inclusion." The title hit me like a foreign language. "Sir, I'm just an intern. I don't have credentials for—" "You have empathy. You have the skill of seeing what others don't. You can build bridges in a world obsessed with walls. That's rarer than a resume." Robert signed quickly, his hands almost trembling. "She reminds me of your mother." Michael's jaw tightened. He swallowed, then continued. "This company talks about diversity in brochures. We write about inclusion in policy documents. But it's a facade. You've shown me what it should look like in practice. I need you to help me rebuild it for my employees, for our clients, for people like my father." I was silent, shocked. Every insecurity I had tried to bury since graduation surged up at once. "I'm not qualified." "You are," Michael said, his tone final, like a verdict. The office was still.
The city sprawled outside, but inside, it felt like the world had narrowed to the three of us, an intern, a CEO, and a father who had finally been seen. Robert reached for my hand, his palm warm, steady. "Say yes, you can change things." My throat closed, tears burning. I couldn't answer, not yet. Michael stood, smoothing his tie, the decision already made in his mind. He said, "Take the weekend, think about it. But remember, this isn't just an offer. It's a chance to do something most people never get, to make the invisible visible." I sat there, trembling, with a weight I'd never carried before. This wasn't the end of my story at Meridian. It was the beginning.
By Monday, the decision was carved into my bones. I said yes. The title sounded surreal on paper. Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. But the reality? It began with a clipboard and a brutal truth. Meridian Communications, the gleaming empire with its trophies and skyscraper views, wasn't built for people like Robert, or Danny, or anyone who needed the world to bend, even slightly, so they could belong. The first thing I noticed was the silence alarms. There were none. If fire ripped through the building, deaf employees or visitors wouldn't know until it was too late. The second, doors too heavy for wheelchair users. The third, elevators without visual displays. Everywhere I turned, the absence was louder than any presence. I walked the halls with engineers, designers, janitors, even security guards. I asked questions no one had ever thought to ask. Could you reach this? Would you hear that? Does this space welcome you or warn you away? Some laughed nervously, others bristled. A few nodded, as though they'd been waiting years for someone to finally ask. Margaret, my old supervisor, cornered me near the copy room one morning. "I don't understand how a 22-year-old intern gets promoted over people who've been here a decade." Her tone was sharp, but beneath it, bruised. "I don't either," I admitted, "but I know this. When Robert Hartwell walked into this building, we failed him. We can't keep failing people." Something shifted in her eyes then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but curiosity. I started small. Visual alert systems for emergencies, ASL interpreters at meetings, basic sign language classes during lunch. The first day of class, only 4 people showed up. By the second week, we had 30. By the third, Margaret was in the front row, practicing the alphabet with a kind of fierce determination that almost made me cry. And then came the trainings. Mandatory, Michael insisted. Every executive, every manager, every intern. I brought in speakers from the deaf community. I asked Robert to tell his story. The lobby, the neglect, the quiet humiliation of being invisible in his own son's company. The room went silent as he signed, his words echoing through the interpreter's voice. I wasn't angry that day. I was used to it. That's the danger. You stop expecting to be seen. Some of the executives squirmed. Others wiped their eyes. When Robert finished, the applause was real, unpolished, human. Michael approached me afterward. He said, "They're listening," quietly. I corrected. "They're changing." It wasn't perfect. Some resented the time it took. Others rolled their eyes at inclusion workshops. But little by little, Meridian's culture began to bend. Employees began greeting Robert when he visited. They learned Danny's name when he came by after school, eager to show off his new signs. The receptionist, Jessica, enrolled in evening ASL classes on her own. And then there was Michael. At first, his signing was clumsy, halting, but week by week, he grew sharper, more fluent. One Friday afternoon, I passed his office and saw him and Robert at the table, not CEO and visitor, but father and son, hands flying, laughing without sound. The sight rooted me to the floor. For years, they'd been divided by silence. Now, a bridge was being rebuilt, one word at a time. 6 months later, Meridian won a national award for workplace inclusion.
The ceremony lights were blinding, the applause thunderous. When Michael handed me the plaque, he didn't take the microphone. He simply signed, "This is yours." But I turned to the audience. I said, "This belongs to Robert, to every person who's been overlooked, to every moment we chose not to see. Inclusion isn't a policy, it's a choice, and we can choose every day to see." In the front row, Robert's hands moved in applause. Danny's too. The room followed. For the first time, I wasn't invisible, and I realized I never would be again.
Not everyone welcomed the change. For every executive who leaned in, another folded their arms. For every junior staffer eager to learn, there was someone whispering in the break room that I was just the intern who got lucky. One afternoon, during a policy rollout meeting, a senior partner named Daniels leaned back in his chair, his voice oily with skepticism. "So now we're supposed to babysit every possible disability that walks through the door? What's next? Braille on our coffee cups?" A few people chuckled. Not many. My stomach twisted, but I kept my gaze steady. "We're not babysitting, Mr. Daniels. We're building a company where no client, employee, or visitor feels like an afterthought. Accessibility isn't charity. It's competence." The silence that followed was thick. Even Michael, seated at the head of the table, let it hang for a moment before speaking. "She's right," he said finally. His tone wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "If that feels like a burden, perhaps you're in the wrong company." Daniels flushed crimson. He didn't chuckle again. The changes rippled outward. Meetings began starting with interpreters in place. Emails included accessibility statements. Designers ran campaigns through filters to check for colorblind readability. Small things, maybe, but together they were tectonic. Still, the more visible I became, the more resistance hardened. Anonymous notes appeared in my inbox. "Stop playing hero. This isn't your job." Once someone scrawled on a whiteboard outside my office, "PC Police HQ." It stung. But then I'd see Danny in the lobby, chatting with an account manager who had learned enough signs to ask about his day. Or Robert, invited to a client presentation, sitting tall as the room slowed down to meet his language. Those moments anchored me. Late one night, long after most of the building had gone dark, I found Michael still in his office, papers spread across his desk, skyline glittering behind him. "You should go home," I said softly. He looked up, eyes shadowed but alive. "Home is quieter than I like," he admitted. Then he gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit." I did. He tapped the table once, as if grounding himself. "I never told you why my father stopped coming here." I waited. "He came 3 years ago. I was in the middle of a deal worth $50 million. Patricia told me he was in the lobby. I told her to. Send him away." Michael's jaw clenched. "I told myself I'd call him later. I didn't. He never came back." The confession sat between us, raw and heavy. "You're fixing that," I said gently. "No." His gaze lifted, steady on me. "You are." For a moment, his guard slipped, and I saw not the CEO, not the strategist, but a son, terrified he'd lost something he could never buy back. It was the first time I realized Michael wasn't just giving me authority. He was asking me to save him too. When Meridian's inclusion initiative finally went public, press release, media coverage, photos of interpreters standing beside executives, I braced for backlash. It came swift and loud. Commentators calling it woke pandering, clients questioning the expense. But then, the letters arrived. A mother thanking us for hiring her wheelchair-using son, a deaf consultant who said our ASL interpreters allowed her to pitch for the first time without exhaustion, an autistic designer who finally felt like her ideas were being heard, not dismissed as quirks. I kept those letters in a box in my office. On hard days, I opened it. Proof that we weren't just shifting company policy, we were shifting lives. And then one Friday evening, Robert appeared in the lobby again. This time, he wasn't waiting, anxious and invisible. He was greeted by name.
by 3 different employees. I met him by the elevators, breathless from finishing a meeting upstairs. "What are you doing here?" I signed. He grinned. "Taking my son to dinner," he promised. I blinked back sudden tears. Michael appeared moments later, coat in hand, signing clumsily but proudly, "Ready, Dad?" The two of them walked out together, no interpreter between them, just father and son, finally finding the same language. I watched until the revolving doors swallowed them both, and for the first time since stepping into Meridian, I believed it. We were building a place where no one walked alone.
6 months after that Tuesday in the lobby, Meridian Communications didn't feel like the same company. The lobby had changed first. What was once a place of brushed steel and cold efficiency now felt alive. Screens displayed welcome messages in multiple languages, including ASL animations. The reception desk kept pens and paper ready, not as an afterthought, but as an invitation. The silence that used to swallow people like Robert now carried voices, signs, and glances that lingered with recognition. It was subtle, but I could see it. People had started seeing each other. The award ceremony was held in a downtown hotel ballroom, all chandeliers and velvet drapes. The stage gleamed with polished wood. Cameras clicked like locusts. Michael stood beside me, his posture crisp, his expression unreadable to everyone but me. I knew he was proud. When the announcer's voice boomed, "Meridian Communications, National Award for Workplace Inclusion," the room erupted. Applause thundered as we walked to the stage. Michael handed me the plaque. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. His hands moved instead. "This is yours." But I couldn't let it end there. I faced the crowd, the plaque cool and heavy in my hands. "This award doesn't belong to me," I said, my voice clear. "It belongs to the man who walked into our lobby and wasn't seen, to the boy who grew up thinking silence made him invisible, to every person who has ever been overlooked." My hands moved as I spoke, every word echoed in signs. Inclusion isn't policy, it isn't strategy, it's a choice. And when we choose it every day, we don't just change workplaces, we change lives. The applause rolled over me, but what I saw, front row, under the chandeliers, was Robert, tears catching the light, signing his applause with both hands. Next to him, Daniel was grinning wide, his hands moving just as fast. And Michael was smiling too. Not the practiced CEO smile, but something raw, almost boyish. After the ceremony, the three of us found a quiet corner. Robert touched my arm, his eyes shining. "You gave me my son back." I shook my head, tears slipping free. "You already had him. He just needed to remember." Michael's voice was soft. "You did more than that, Catherine. You gave this company a conscience." I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. I just let the silence sit between us, heavy and sacred. Weeks later, back at Meridian, the changes kept coming. Accessibility wasn't just a department anymore, it was the air we breathed. Training programs expanded, hiring pipelines shifted, campaigns went through filters not just for marketability, but for humanity. And the culture? Oh, the culture had cracked open. Meetings started with introductions that included pronouns and eye contact. Lunchrooms buzzed with half-signed conversations, imperfect but earnest. Doors that had once been barriers now swung wide. Danny came by one afternoon, tugging at my sleeve. "You're like a superhero," he signed, his grin mischievous. I laughed. "Superheroes wear capes. I just carry a clipboard." He shook his head fiercely. "No, you make people see. That's better." On Fridays now, Robert and Michael had lunch together. I'd pass them sometimes in the lobby, Robert in his suit, Michael carrying 2 coffees. They'd be signing, still clumsy on Michael's side, still patient on Robert's. And every time, my chest ached in the best way. The bridge they'd built wasn't perfect. It wobbled, it needed maintenance, it demanded effort. But it stood.
One evening after everyone had gone home, I lingered in the lobby. The same lobby where it had all begun. The leather chairs, the glass doors, the hum of the city outside. I closed my eyes and saw it again. An old man, shoulders slumped, ignored by a world too busy to notice. And the girl, trembling but stubborn, who decided to stop being invisible long enough to see him. I smiled. Sometimes the smallest gestures are the ones that change everything. A signed hello, a seat offered, a choice to care. That Tuesday hadn't just changed my internship. It had changed the company. It had changed a family. It had changed me. The elevator chimed behind me. Michael stepped out, coat over his arm. He paused when he saw me, then walked over. "Still here?" he asked. "Just remembering," I said. He followed my gaze around the lobby. For once, his smile came easily. Not a bad place to start. We stood there a moment side by side. Then he said, almost to himself, "You were right. Sometimes one person can change everything." I looked at him. The city lights are reflected in the glass around us. "No," I whispered. "Sometimes it takes two." And with that, the story of a shy intern, an old man, and a CEO closed its first chapter, not with endings, but with beginnings.